Getting a peace deal in the Middle East is such a priority to President Obama that his first foreign calls on his first day in office were to Arab and Israeli leaders. And on day two, the president made former Senator George Mitchell his special envoy for Middle East peace. Mr. Obama wants to shore up the ceasefire in Gaza, but a lasting peace really depends on the West Bank, where Palestinians had hoped to create their state. The problem is, even before Israel invaded Gaza, a growing number of Israelis and Palestinians had concluded that peace between them was no longer possible, that history had passed it by. For peace to have a chance, Israel would have to withdraw from the West Bank, which would then become the Palestinian state. It's known as the two-state solution. But while negotiations have been going on for 15 years, hundreds of thousands of Jewish settlers have moved in to occupy the West Bank. Palestinians say they can't have a state with Israeli settlers all over it, which the settlers say is precisely the idea. Daniela Weiss moved from Israel to the West Bank 33 years ago. She's been the mayor of a large settlement.
I think that settlements prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state in the land of Israel. This is the goal and this is the reality.
Though settlers and Palestinians don't agree on anything, most do agree now that a peace deal has been overtaken by events. Dr. Mustafa Barghouti is a former candidate for Palestinian president.
While my heart still wants to believe that the two-state solution is possible, my brain keeps telling me the opposite because of what I see in terms of the building of settlements. So in a way, these settlers are destroying the potential peace for both people that would have been created if we had two-state solution.
And he told us Israel's invasion of Gaza, all the death and destruction, convinces him that Israel does not want a two-state solution.
I am very worried that what Israel has done has furthered us much further from the possibility of two-state solution.
Palestinians had hoped to establish their state here on the West Bank, an area the size of Delaware. But Israelis have sliced it up with scores of settlements and hundreds of miles of new highways that only settlers can use. Palestinians have to drive or ride on the older roads. When they want to travel from one town to another, they have to submit to humiliating delays at checkpoints and roadblocks. There are more than 600 of them on the West Bank. Why do the Israelis have so many checkpoints?
I think the main goal is to fragment the West Bank. Maybe a little bit of them can be justified because they say it's for security, but I think the vast majority of them are basically to block the movement of people from one place to another.
Here's how they block Dr. Barghouti. He was born in Jerusalem, grew up in Jerusalem, and worked in a hospital there for 14 years. 4 years ago, he moved to a town just 10 miles away. But now, because he no longer lives in Jerusalem, he can't get back in, ever. Now, 1 minute. You cannot go to Jerusalem?
At all.
Can't you get a permit to go?
I asked for a permit to go to Jerusalem during the last 2 years, about 16 times. And 16 times they were rejected. Like most Palestinians, I don't have a permit to go to the city I was born in, to the city I used to work in, to the city where my sister lives.
Here's what he's up against. Scores of Israeli settlements dominating the lowlands like crusader fortresses. Many are little cities, and none of them existed 40 years ago. The Israelis always take the high ground, sometimes the hills, sometimes the homes, and sometimes Arabs are occupied inside their own homes. This house, for example, the highest house on the highest hill overlooking the town of Nablus. We learned that Israeli soldiers often corral the 4 families who live here and take over the house to monitor movement down below. We're going into an apartment owned by Mr. Nassif here in Nablus. We understand that Israeli soldiers came in this morning and, without any notice, without any invitation, came into the apartment and have been there ever since.
We cannot speak with you. There is the soldiers.
The soldiers?
Yes.
What are they doing here?
We are prison here.
What's happening?
They are keeping here, and the soldiers upstairs. We cannot move. We cannot speak with you.
You can't leave the house?
No.
They told you that?
Yes, I can't breathe.
How long are they going to stay?
I don't know.
Are they paying you any money?
You are kidding.
I'm kidding.
Abdul Nassif, the bank manager, said he had to get to his bank to open the safe, but that soldiers won't let him go. He told us when the soldiers come, they wake everybody up and herd them into a kitchen for hours while soldiers sleep in their bedrooms. They can't leave or use the phone or let us in. He sent us downstairs to see if his brother would open the door so we could ask the soldiers why they keep taking over this house.
You want to come?
Yes. Just open the door and then...
The soldiers close the door from the keys. They take the keys.
So we left, and that night, so did the soldiers. But when we returned 2 days later, the soldiers were back for more surveillance. This time, they kept the women under house arrest, but let the men go to work and the children go to school. When the children returned, we caught a glimpse of 2 armed soldiers at the top of the stairs. Then more children came home, but the soldiers wouldn't open the door again.
They say if you don't go back behind the wall, the children will not enter the house.
But this is where the children live.
Yeah, but you need to go away from the door so I can let the children come in, okay?
Who are you?
He's a commander here.
He's the commander here.
Yeah.
Can we talk to you?
No.
Well, we're talking to you now. Why don't you tell us what you're doing here? Have you lost your voice? Well, they've closed the door now. They've closed the window. So I guess if the children are going to get home, we have to leave. So that's what we'll do. An army spokesman told us the soldiers use the Nassif's house for important surveillance operations. The Nassifs told us the soldiers usually stay for a day or two, always coming and going in the middle of the night. When they do go, the Nassifs never know when they'll be occupied again. It could be tomorrow, next week, or next month. The only certainty, they say, is that the soldiers will be back. Another crippling reality on the West Bank is high unemployment, now about 20%. So some Palestinians can only find jobs building Israeli settlements. They're so ashamed to work here that they asked us not to show their faces. The settlers now number about 280,000, and as they keep moving in, their population keeps growing, about 5% every year. But the 2.5 million Arabs have their strategy too. They're growing bigger families. Demographers predict that within 10 years, Arabs will outnumber Jews in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Without a separate Palestinian state, the Israelis would have 3 options, none of them good. They could try ethnic cleansing, drive the Palestinians out of the West Bank. They could give the Palestinians the vote. That would be the democratic option, but it would mean the end of the Jewish state. Or they could inflict apartheid, have the minority Israelis rule the majority Palestinians. But apartheid regimes don't have a very long life.
Unfortunately, and I have to say to you that apartheid is already in place.
Apartheid is already in place.
Absolutely.
Apartheid? Israel is building what it calls a security wall between the West Bank and Israel. The Palestinians are furious because it appropriates 8% of the West Bank. Not only that, it weaves its way through Palestinian farms, separating farmers from their land. They have to wait at gates for soldiers to let them in. Settlers get a lot more water than Palestinians, which is why settlements are green and Arab areas are not. Moderate Israelis who deplore the occupation used to believe passionately in a 2-state solution. No longer. Meren Benvenisti used to be deputy mayor of Jerusalem. Israeli leaders and Palestinian leaders are negotiating a 2-state solution. What do you think the prospects are?
Prospects are nil. The geopolitical condition that's been created in 1967 is irreversible. Cannot be changed. You cannot unscramble that egg.
Does this mean that the settlers have won?
Yes.
And the settlers will remain forever and ever?
I don't know forever and ever, but they will remain and will flourish.
The settlers, the attitude that I present here, this is the heart, this is the pulse, this is the past, present, and future of the Jewish nation.
So you're saying, basically, that you and your fellow settlers are immovable?
I say that we and the settlers here are immovable. We will stay here forever.
But one very important Israeli says she intends to move them out. She's Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, a candidate to become prime minister in elections next month. She's also Israel's chief negotiator with the Palestinians, and she told us peace is unthinkable with the settlers where they are. Can you really imagine evacuating the tens of thousands of settlers who say they will not leave?
It's not going to be easy, but this is the only solution.
But you know that there are settlers who say, we will fight, we will not leave, we will fight.
So this is the responsibility of the government, of the police, to stop them. As simple as that. Israel is a state of law and order.
And disorder. Here's what happened 3 years ago when the army evicted just 9 families from a West Bank settlement called Amona. It was chaos, the first time since the creation of the state that Jews were in pitched battle against Jews. To Israelis of all stripes, it was not a pretty picture, and it made the government loath to try again. Officials fear that more battles to empty settlements could rip Israel apart. They're afraid that religious officers in the army, and there are an increasing number of them, would disobey any order to evict settlers.
There wouldn't be a mutiny in the army.
A mutiny in the army?
I think a mutiny against such an illegal order will make our army only stronger.
The army is evicting Arabs from their homes in East Jerusalem, which Palestinians hoped to make their capital. Outraged, Arabs tried to save their homes, but the Israelis had the guns. Israel demolished more than 100 Arab homes in the past year, ruling they'd been illegally built. Arabs say this is just another tactic to drive them out. But officials say they also knocked down unauthorized Jewish buildings on the West Bank. They're put up by youngsters, the next generation's campaign to populate the land. Daniela Weiss told us they will not be stopped. The army tore this down this morning.
Yes.
And now you're rebuilding it.
Yes, and we will have the upper hand.
But the army will tear it down again.
So we will rebuild it. The experience shows that the world belongs to those who are stubborn, and we are very stubborn.
Stubborn, she says, because they were ordered to populate this land by no less an authority than God.
This is the mission of our generation. The most important point is this: to hold strong to the soil of the Holy Land.
Jerusalem is one of the holiest cities on earth for Jews, for Muslims, and for Christians. It's also one of the most difficult issues at the negotiating table as Palestinians and Israelis struggle to continue the peace talks. The challenge is how to divide the city between the two sides. Back in 2000, then President Clinton came up with some parameters for how to do it. Areas populated mostly by Jews would remain Israeli. Those populated mostly by Arabs would become the new Palestinian capital. That meant that for the most part, East Jerusalem would go to the Arabs. Well, it's not so simple anymore. In the decade that's elapsed, more and more Israeli settlers have moved east into the Arab-populated areas. One place where it's gotten especially complicated and volatile is the Arab neighborhood of Silwan. The complication in Silwan involves an Israeli archaeological dig called the City of David. Go to Jerusalem today, and you'll likely visit the City of David, one of the world's great archaeological wonders, where diggers are sifting back through time, scores of workers filling hundreds of buckets, unearthing thousands of years.
This tunnel is 3,850 years old.
And this was the way it was.
This is exactly original. Look at these stones. You can even see the chisel marks along the walls.
Doron Spielman is the site's international director of development.
This is the original old flooring. These are more ritual baths or water cisterns.
He led us down to an ancient waterway carved out of the hard stone.
The whole beginning of life in ancient Jerusalem happened from this little spring which is nestled in this little cave.
We were taken down excavated tunnels no human eye has seen for 2 millennia and shown the process of removing the layers of history, sandbag by sandbag, from when the city was sacked by the Romans and before them the Babylonians. This was the first time I'd ever done an interview in a Canaanite fortress. So this structure was here when Abraham was here.
That's right. He saw it with his own eyes.
He saw this.
He saw this.
That's a bit of a stretch. Archaeologists tell us that no one has found any evidence that Abraham was ever here. It's controversial that the city of David uses discoveries to try to confirm what's in the Bible, particularly from the time of David, the king who made Jerusalem his capital.
People believe that when King David captured the city, he snuck underground through this tunnel, which led him underneath the city wall up into the city.
500,000 tourists visit the site every year with guides who try to bring King David to life. There's an implicit message that because David conquered the city for the Jews back then, Jerusalem belongs to the Jews today. Today, I've seen scores and scores of soldiers coming through.
It's part of their cultural day to try to learn about what they're fighting for. And when we bring them here, they understand that they're not just fighting for today. They actually represent the return of the Jewish people to Israel after thousands of years.
So archaeology is being used as a political tool. Maybe, I hate to use the word, but indoctrination almost.
I wouldn't call it indoctrination. I would call it giving meaning to life, giving meaning to why we're here.
But for all the talk of King David, one thing is glaringly missing here at the city of David. There's actually no evidence of David, right?
There's no doubt that this is the city of David from the Bible. There's no doubt that the Bible took place here. Proof of David himself, until we find the actual name, we can't say.
Another problem is an inconvenient truth that biblical Jerusalem is not located in the western half of the city. It's right under the densely populated Arab neighborhood of Silwan. And according to the Clinton parameters, Silwan should be part of a Palestinian state. To remedy that, organizations that move Jewish settlers into Arab areas have infiltrated Silwan. Under heavy security, a group of settlers live in this 7-story building. They've barricaded themselves in and refuse to leave. With some 450 Jews living among tens of thousands of Arabs, Silwan is now at the center of the battle to keep all of Jerusalem under Israeli control. So how does the city of David tie into this? Well, while a government agency oversees the excavations, the dig and the site are largely funded and run by something called Elad. Doron Spielman works for Elad, which claims they're not a settlers organization, though people we spoke to say they are.
I think that'd be correct to call us an organization who believes deeply in the history of Jerusalem.
So it's all archaeology?
Archaeology and rebuilding a Jewish neighborhood.
So Elad is doing archaeology and settlements?
We are doing archaeology and we are buying homes and buying land.
But is it Elad's goal to ease the Arabs away from right where we are right now?
Put it this way, if there's a home that an Arab wants to sell and I have the money to buy it and I can enable a Jewish family to live there and I can dig archaeologically underneath it, then I think that's a wonderful thing to do.
The Arabs say it's a provocative thing to do. Devout Jews, Yonatan and Devorah Adler, live in one of the houses Elad bought. Elad has raised tens of millions of dollars, half from the United States, and buys these homes on land the Palestinians claim for a future state. The Adlers raised their 6 kids here on the actual dig.
The city of David is where Jerusalem began. This is where prophets walked. This is where half of the Bible was written. This is what we're talking about.
And yet, when you see those maps, it's over on the Palestinian side.
Yeah, well, maps are written on paper. This is written on our hearts.
But it is one of the proposals on the table.
I'll tell you, Jerusalem cannot be divided. Jews would never allow it.
The Adlers say they don't mind living behind gates and having guards on their roof. They would never consider leaving. But you're like a soldier on the front line.
I don't think we see ourselves as soldiers at all. We see ourselves very much as regular, everyday people living in a very, very special place.
Palestinian Jawad Siam was born in this very, very special place and says he can trace his roots here back 930 years. He's pessimistic about the Palestinians ever having their own state. What will happen to this village if there's a two-state solution?
I don't think there will be a two-state solution. It's not possible to do it. Today, the settler groups are much stronger than before. The settler groups in Jerusalem, they are controlling.
He's angry that Elad bought his grandmother's house and moved a number of Jewish families in. So he's become an activist leader in Silwan, where there have been a string of escalating confrontations. In this protest at the City of David, Jawad got into a shouting match with a site worker behind a gate.
And you will be rubbish of the history. There is no proof that King David was here. You want to take our village.
Some of the incidents have become violent, like this one just 9 days ago. Boys were throwing stones at passing cars. Watch what happens next as two of the boys get hit by one of the cars. The driver was, of all people, the head of Elad. He later went to the police and said he hadn't stopped because he felt his life was in danger. Both boys survived, one with a broken leg. Fighting often erupts here with Israeli guards brought in to protect the settlers.
Clashes are daily inside Silwan between the villagers and settlers and the gun guards for the security there.
The government pays for the gun guards?
It's tax money. I pay it. Everyone who is paying taxes is paying.
You pay taxes, and that money goes to pay for the guards to guard the settlers.
Yeah, of course.
So you're helping guard the settlers?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the settlers, of the gun guards.
Jawad says that Elad uses the dig's archaeological prestige to hide its aim of moving the locals out. And he believes that the tunneling is a way for Elad to extend its reach deeper into Silwan. They think you're digging under their houses.
It does at points go underneath homes, deep underneath the ground, which is why we have these metal supports around us.
But it's under Arab homes.
It's under Jewish homes, Arab homes, and a road. What concerns these residents, Lesley, is not the tunnel. It's where the tunnel's going. It's what the tunnel means that concerns them.
Well, where's the tunnel going?
The tunnel one day will open into the Western Wall Plaza, and you will have undergone an experience that shows the Jewish temple was important 600 years before Muhammad.
To understand why this is so explosive, you have to understand the geography. Silwan lies in the shadow of some of the holiest sites in the world: Judaism's Western Wall, and Islam's Dome of the Rock, and Al-Aqsa Mosque. There's a feeling of encroachment. The Arabs feel it.
There's no other place in the world that Jews want to live more than here. The Arabs have Mecca, they have Medina, and they may also be interested in Jerusalem, but for the Jews, this is our only home.
That feeling of Jewish encroachment has been heightened by the mayor of Jerusalem, Nir Barkat, who is doing all he can to make sure East Jerusalem remains under Israeli sovereignty.
We have to maintain a united Jerusalem.
The mayor brought us to a hilltop over Silwan to show us his latest project called King's Garden.
This is the most important area in the world.
In the whole world?
Definitely. And in the valley, right there, below us, is where King's Garden was.
He wants to create a Bible-themed garden and turn it into a tourist park adjacent to the City of David. But as with the dig, the local Arabs see this as another attempt to gobble up their side of Jerusalem. Building the mayor's park requires demolishing 22 Arab homes in Silwan. If you began to demolish these houses, it would be explosive, wouldn't it?
That's why you have to be very smart and sensitive dealing with an area so important in the city of Jerusalem.
He says that area is a slum in which the houses were built illegally, and his plan will fix that. But the locals want to stay in their homes. I heard you wanted to evict people. Where are those houses?
That's just not true.
Well, wait, if you make a park, then those houses can't be there anymore.
They mustn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah, so you will evict. You will evict.
Not evict. When you improve their quality of life, the right word to say is that you're dealing with improvement of quality of life.
His park, he says, will upgrade the area, and he'll allow the people who'll be evicted to build new houses nearby. But locals tell us the only way to do that would be to build on top of other homes in Silwan. The European Union, the United Nations, has criticized this plan to get rid of these 22 homes. Public opinion, especially while the peace talks are underway, is looking at this and saying, you're trying to move Arabs out of Jerusalem.
Not true.
But that's the way it looks. And
Well,
my question is, why not wait till the peace talks are settled?
Lesley, the facts are wrong. Those structures are illegal. They're sitting on an area that the world wants to be part of a city that is flourishing, that is clean, that is beautiful. So what I'm saying here is get your facts right before you bash Israel, before you bash Jerusalem.
But my question was, why now? That's the
What do you mean, why now?
Because it's on the table at the peace talks.
Lesley, listen, I'm committed to bring more tourism to the city of Jerusalem. Now, this plan is a plan that I started a year and a half ago.
You say that Jerusalem must never be divided. But most of the rest of the world says that if you want peace, that may be the price that you have to pay.
Lesley, it's not going to work. You have to understand that for a city to be functional, to increase tourism, to be able to see the sites that you've seen, it has to be a united city.
Meanwhile, in the city of David, the excavations are continuing in full force. You can say they're digging in. Settlements have been a stumbling block in peace negotiations of the past. And what your organization is dedicated to doing could become the stumbling block again.
We are looking, Lesley, to go down and uncover history. If coming back to my home after 3,000 years is a stumbling block to peace, then I think that is not a very good peace.
Christianity may have been born in the Middle East, but Arab Christians have never had it easy there, especially not today. In Iraq and Egypt, scores of churches have been attacked, hundreds murdered. In Syria, revolution seriously threatens Christian communities. The one place where Christians are not suffering from violence is the Holy Land. But Palestinian Christians have been leaving in large numbers for years. So many, the Christian population there is down to less than 2%. And the prospect of holy sites, like Jerusalem and Bethlehem, without local Christians is looming as a real possibility. This is what the Holy Land looks like today. Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, Nazareth, where he grew up, Jerusalem, where he died and where Christians believe he was resurrected. Nazareth is inside the state of Israel. Bethlehem is on the Israeli-occupied West Bank. The Christian section of Jerusalem is also under Israeli control. We know the area well, know that it is arguably the most fought-over piece of real estate in the world, sacred to half of humanity. Still, when we decided to do the story last year, we did not realize it would become so controversial. Our story begins in Bethlehem, where it all began. We went to St. Catherine's in the Church of the Nativity. For local Catholics, this is their parish church. The day we went, a confirmation was underway. Father Marwan Didas, a Franciscan, led one child after another up to the altar, watched by proud parents. The church was so crowded, it was difficult to believe that Christians now make up only 18% of what was for centuries an overwhelmingly Christian town.
We are the living stones of the Holy Land. From here it all started, and it had to continue. It's a must. It must continue. If there is no people, no Christians here, it will never continue.
Here in Jerusalem, the numbers are even bleaker than in Bethlehem.
Inside here, famous church.
Theophilus III, the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox, has lived through the decline. His church, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, is the most sacred site in Christendom. He took us up to the roof. You've got to know a patriarch to get here.
Come in. So you are in the Holy Sepulchre, inside the Holy Sepulchre. Just inside here is the tomb.
That is, the tomb which covers the site of the resurrection. When you first came here in 1964, what was the percentage of Christians in the old city?
There were around 30,000. of Christians living in the old city.
And now how many are there?
Very few.
So few, some 11,000 Christians out of a population of almost 800,000, just 1.5%. Religious leaders are afraid Jerusalem could become a museum, a spiritual theme park, a great place for tourists and pilgrims, but not for the Arab Christians whose roots date back to the church's very beginnings.
Christianity started here. The only thing that Palestine was able to export so successfully was Christianity.
Mitri Raheb is a Palestinian, a Christian, and a Lutheran minister from Bethlehem. He runs schools, cultural centers, and health clinics.
Christianity has actually on the back a stamp saying, "Made in Palestine."
Palestinian Christians, once a powerful minority, are becoming the invisible people, squeezed between a growing Muslim majority and burgeoning Israeli settlements. Israel has occupied the West Bank for 45 years.
If you see what's happening in the West Bank, you will find that the West Bank is becoming more and more like a piece of a Swiss cheese, where Israel gets the cheese, that is the land, the water resources, the archaeological sites, and the Palestinians are pushed in the holes behind the walls.
Israel built the wall over the last 10 years, which completely separates Israel from the occupied West Bank. The wall was built to stop Palestinian terrorists from getting into Israel, and it's worked. Terrorism has gone down 90%. At the same time, the wall completely surrounds Bethlehem, turning the little town where Christ was born into what its residents call an open-air prison.
You remember the day they put up the wall?
Yeah, actually it was in 2003, and I was about 14 years old. I went to school one day. I came back and found the wall surrounding the house.
Christy Anastas lives with her mother Claire, her father, brother, and sister in this house, which is surrounded on 3 sides by the wall.
How do you live with this?
Well, it's not easy actually, but you get used to it because you have to.
The Anastas family lives on the 3rd floor. This is the view from the kitchen, from the master bedroom and bathroom. The children's room has a good view of this Israeli guard tower. The family runs a souvenir shop on the ground floor, sells Christian artifacts on what used to be the busiest commercial street in town. Now, it's a dead end. Members of your family have already left.
Yes.
And they have asked you to leave too.
Yes.
What do you say to them?
I told them we have to stay. We need to stay and struggle and fight. This is our cross.
For all Palestinians, just leaving Bethlehem is a struggle. Getting to Jerusalem, only 7 miles away, whether it's to pray, go to a doctor, visit family members, or work, means going through this Israeli checkpoint. That can take hours. But before Palestinians can get even this far, they need a permit from the Israelis, which can take weeks or months to obtain, and is frequently denied.
We regret any inconvenience caused by the security precautions, but it's their inconvenience, it's our survival.
Michael Oren, who used to be Israel's director of interreligious affairs, is Israel's ambassador to the United States.
We have to protect our country, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do in order to survive.
For Palestinian Christians, the survival of their culture is in danger. In towns like Bethlehem, which used to be distinctively Christian, Muslims now are a clear and growing majority. The veil is replacing the cross. But inside Israel, in Christian towns like Nazareth, Arabs are Israeli citizens, and according to Ambassador Oren, they're thriving. The reason Christians are leaving the West Bank, he says, is Islamic extremism.
I think that the major problem in the West Bank, as in elsewhere in the Middle East, is that the Christian communities are living under duress.
And this duress is coming from Muslims, not from the Israeli occupation.
I believe that the major duress is coming from that.
Great selling point. Easy to sell to the American public.
Zahi Houri is a Palestinian businessman. He owns the West Bank Coca-Cola franchise.
I'll tell you, I don't know of anybody, and I probably have 12,000 customers here. I've never heard that someone is leaving because of Islamic persecution.
Harry Shavit, one of Israel's most respected columnists, believes Christians have become collateral damage.
I think this is a land that has seen in the last century a terrible struggle between political Judaism and political Islam in different variations.
And the Christians are being squeezed in the middle between the Jews and the Muslims.
Absolutely.
Should Israel be concerned about that?
I think we should all be concerned about it. Political Judaism and political Islam are rocky. They are harsh. And the friction, the clash between them is very violent.
In 2009, this group of Christian activists did something unprecedented. They published a document called Kairos, criticizing Islamic extremism and advocating nonviolent resistance to the Israeli occupation, which they called a sin against God. It was endorsed by the leaders of 13 Christian denominations, including Greek Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Lutheran, and Anglican.
These are denominations who have been exceedingly critical of the State of Israel, and sometimes to the point of going beyond legitimate criticism. And so,
what does that mean, to go beyond legitimate criticism?
Accusing us of crimes that would be very, I think, historically associated with anti-Semitism. And it was actually so inflammatory, Bob, that many of us didn't even bother responding to it.
They are fearful of this document because they are afraid this might influence the Christian world.
Reverend Raheb, who helped write the document, says it's anything but anti-Semitic.
This document doesn't ask for violence, it doesn't ask for revenge. The most powerful thing in this document, actually, is that asking for hope and love and faith.
Do you think the Israeli government ever thinks of the fact that if Christians aren't being treated well here, and America is an overwhelmingly Christian country, that this could have consequences?
Israel is not persecuting Christians as Christians. The Christians in the Holy Land suffer from Israeli policies that are a result of the overall tragic situation. And this, of course, has consequences for everybody.
For Israel, there could be serious economic consequences. According to Israeli government figures, tourism is a multi-billion-dollar business there. Most tourists are Christian, many of them are American. That's one reason why Israelis are very sensitive about their image in the United States. And that could be why Ambassador Oren phoned Jeff Fager, the head of CBS News and executive producer of 60 Minutes, while we were still reporting the story, long before tonight's broadcast. He said he had information our story was, quote, a hatchet job.
It seemed to me outrageous, completely incomprehensible, that at a time when these communities, Christian communities throughout the Middle East, are being oppressed and massacred, when churches are being burnt, when one of the great stories in history is unfolding, I think you got me a little bit mystified.
And it was a reason to call the chairman of CBS News.
Bob, I'm the ambassador of the State of Israel. I do that very, very infrequently as ambassador. That's an extraordinary move for me to complain about something. When I heard that you were going to do a story about Christians in the Holy Land, and my assumption, and had, I believe, information about the nature of it, and it's been confirmed by this interview today.
Nothing has been confirmed by the interview, Mr. Ambassador, because you don't know what's going to be put on air.
Okay, I don't. True.
Mr. Ambassador, I've been doing this a long time, and I've received lots of reactions from just about everyone I've done stories about, but I've never gotten a reaction before from a story that hasn't been broadcast yet.
Well, it's the first time for everything, Bob.
This land has seen just about everything over the centuries. The ritual in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the day before Easter, hasn't changed in more than a millennium. We went into the church with Patriarch Theophilus and watched thousands jostling to get as close as they could to the tomb from which they believe Christ was risen. Pilgrims have been coming here since 1106 AD to wash themselves in the holy fire to celebrate the founding miracle of Christianity. They'll certainly continue to do so. But how many will be coming from the neighborhood? That's not a religious question anymore. It's political. We went looking for a place of calm in the Middle East, a place not racked by violence, anxiety, torment. Not an easy mission these days, but we found one in the unlikeliest of spots, Israel's largest city, Tel Aviv, bordered on all sides by danger. Tel Aviv has been through rough times over the decades, bloodshed, bombings, Scud missile attacks. And today the situation looks dicier than ever. Revolutions, civil wars, Islamic extremists are just a few hours' drive away in every direction. And if Iran ever builds that bomb, Tel Aviv will be well within range. So anything could happen any time. But somehow, Tel Avivians have learned how not to worry about tomorrow. For them, the only time is now. And the best place to spend now, 12 months a year, is the beach. You would be forgiven for thinking this is Miami on the Med, thousands of miles from the madness of the Middle East.
This is an island of sanity in this country.
An island of sanity.
The island of sanity
in this country. And in the Middle
but
East.
The island is very big.
Ron Huldai, who fought as a fighter pilot in 3 wars, has been mayor of Tel Aviv for 13 years. He just started a bike share program. If I look behind you, pointing to Gaza, there are hundreds of rockets, Katyushas, pointing at Tel Aviv. You look that way, there are thousands of missiles from Hezbollah pointing at Tel Aviv. How do you deal with that?
This is our life. What else we can do? When you go out of your home in New York, you have the chance to get a car accident.
Yeah, you have a chance to get a car accident, but you know that New Jersey doesn't have missiles pointing at you.
But in life, there are a lot of risks. Always.
Always. Iran today, Iraq yesterday. During the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein rained Scuds on the city. Soon after that, the streets of Tel Aviv became killing zones as Palestinian suicide bombers blew up buses and cars and clubs. But the bombings didn't stop Tel Avivians from going to the beach by day and the bars by night. Arik Kneller lived through it all. Do you ever feel like you're dancing on the Titanic?
Sometimes. Maybe part of the reasons people dance on the tables is because they really believe that tomorrow Tel Aviv is going to be attacked. And they really do live as if it's the last day of Pompeii. And they want to grab every second of it.
And many do. There are more bars than synagogues in this city of the Jews. And remember, Tel Aviv is not that far from where Moses came down the hill with those commandments. Tel Aviv wasn't always a latter-day Sodom. 20 years ago, Tel Avivians were in the vanguard of the peace movement, cheering Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin on as he shook hands with Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat at the White House. Negotiations began, but then stalled, so the activists went home and retreated into apathy. Years ago, people in Tel Aviv were passionately political. They're not anymore. What happened?
They're tired. Part of it is that they're tired.
People have said to me that they've become numb.
Yeah. There's a feeling of stagnation in that sense. There's a feeling that there's not really hope.
There's no political debate in Israel. There's no debate almost about anything.
Gideon Levy is a columnist with one of Israel's leading newspapers.
It's all about the next vacation, the next Jeep, the next restaurant. And the good life in Tel Aviv enables you to ignore the real questions.
Is it bad taste to bring up politics at a dinner party?
Absolutely. Why to spoil the party? Why to spoil the party, this ongoing party, with politics? Who needs it? When life is so beautiful, when life is so short, when women are so pretty and food is so tasty.
And when the economy is booming. The recession passed Tel Aviv by. There's low unemployment, everyone can afford the basics, but there are wide income gaps in what used to be a fairly egalitarian society. Property prices have soared, more than 70% in the last 3 years. Rentals are so high, it's said a starving artist doesn't even have a place to starve. But for the elite, and there are more of them every year, life can be glorious. Wealth is rampant, and Yossi Vardi has it. He owes it, he says, to making a modest investment in an idea proposed by his young son. They called it instant messaging. That was the foundation, wasn't it?
It was early, it was pioneering, it was successful. Then, after 18 months, AOL came and bought the whole company.
How much?
According to the press, $407 million in 1996.
Vardi is now called the godfather of what has become a vast software empire. Tel Aviv, this startup city, has more high-tech startup companies than anywhere outside Silicon Valley. It is so far ahead of the curve, you can barely see the end of it. Why does Israel have so many startups?
Well, some people say it's because of the military. Some people say it's because of the universities, the level of education. Some people say it's because of the level of technology.
What do you say?
I say it's a cultural phenomena, and the secret sauce behind it is the Jewish mother. Every startup kid here has a Jewish mother, which drive him crazy, which will push them and challenge them and inspire them.
And inspire young people from all over Israel and the world to flock here for the good life. Lonely Planet, that hip travel magazine, has voted Tel Aviv the third hottest city in the world, complete with cops patrolling on roller skates and city officials giving interviews in places where American politicians wouldn't dare to be seen. Outside a trendy bar, we ran across Tel Aviv's deputy mayor, Asaf Zamir. What are you drinking?
This is vodka soda because I'm on a diet.
And there aren't any people who would be watching you on television and saying, what the hell is our deputy mayor doing drinking outside a bar at 2 in the morning?
This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I've done this, I've been doing this before I got elected. This is my way of life, and most of the young people in Tel Aviv, we go out every evening. And I think the people that vote for me will find it fine.
Tel Avivians love to think of themselves as avant-garde. The art scene is vibrant. New openings every week. Fashion is cutting edge, along with music and dance and theater. And compared to the rest of Israel, Tel Aviv is not only more cosmopolitan, but more tolerant. People seem to get along. Religious and secular, soldiers and civilians, straights and gays. In a poll published this year, the city was voted the best gay destination in the world. Those old closet makers are going out of business, and that's just fine with actress Noah Tishby.
It's such a non-issue in Israel. That's the thing. Being straight or being gay is a complete non-issue. I mean, gays in the military. What's the problem?
Here it's not don't ask, don't tell, it's don't ask, who cares?
Who cares? Exactly. Don't ask. Ask. Tell me. I don't care. Grab a gun. Go fight. I don't care.
All Israelis, men and women, are drafted into the army when they're 18. Galushevsky did his 3-year service in the late 70s. Today he's a gay activist and a columnist for one of Tel Aviv's hippest magazines. In many parts of the world, parents, definitely including Jewish parents, are not happy when their kid turns out to be gay. Is it the same here?
No, here it's a little different because, you know, Israel is a war zone. It's been a war zone for many years. It's very hard to raise a child here. They can die in the army, they can die in a suicide bombing. So the whole feeling of an Israeli parent is that it's
It's a big war to keep your kid alive till 21. So if at 22 he comes, or at any age, he comes and says, okay, I'm gay, you know, it's not as bad.
And that chronic war continues. The very week we were there in the bubble of safety that is Tel Aviv, less than an hour away, Palestinians and Israelis were going through their rituals on the occupied West Bank. Rituals which have been going on for decades and are as routine as a dinner and a dance downtown. Gideon Levy says that for Tel Avivians, the West Bank could be on another planet.
They have no idea what's going on there. This is their dark backyard to which they will never go, to which they have no interest, about which they know so little.
And Tel Avivians don't really care.
Not only they don't care, they don't want to care. They really want to close their eyes.
And Levy says they've succeeded. He's one of the very few Israeli civilians who has any contact with Palestinians, covers the West Bank for an Israeli newspaper. And every day, when he gets back to Tel Aviv from the occupied territories, that's when he's reminded that he lives in a bubble.
Because this is what a bubble is about. The illusion of the moment, the life for the present and for the very, very short-run future. It can work for a while until it will blow in our faces, and it will blow in our faces.
For the most part, Tel Avivians have become fatalistic. Many feel there's just not much they can do about anything. The Arab Spring, Palestinians, a nuclear Iran. There's a lot of uncertainty now, of course, but that's all there's ever been, uncertainty. Do you ever worry that this will still be a home for your great-grandchildren?
Look, I will not tell you that everybody is sitting here like an idiot, don't worry about the future. We have this damn conflict that I hope we will finish one day, and I hope we will do peace. But in the meantime, look what we created.
You like it here?
I don't like it here. I am addicted to this place. Not only like, I love it.